All right, AP Psych kids, welcome back to the second semester. This will be Unit 4. And today we're going to start with 4.1. We're going to be looking at attribution theory and personal perception. We'll talk about perception and sensation. We'll talk about top-down and up-down processing and all that good kind of stuff. So let's get started. All right. And please make sure you're doing your readings in both the Myers textbook and working in the AP classroom. So attribution theory is the first thing we're going to cover today. And we're going to be looking at two types of it. It's dispositional and situational. So what is attribution theory? Attribution is the way that we explain the causes or causes of behavior. So if you think about this, we always want to understand why people do what they do. And so attribution theory is going to be one of the lenses that we could use as psychologists to come through. Now, I have a couple typos here. I'll get those corrected in the final one that I submit for you. But if we look at dispositional attribution, if we look at this, it's the assumption about behavior. And we're looking at how it's driven. And this one especially is going to be internal traits such as intelligence or personality. Look, for example, he must have studied hard or he must be smart is a dispositional attribution that we would probably look at. Or he failed the test, so he probably didn't study, or he's ill-motivated. So that's kind of it. So that's the difference. That's the first one. The situational attribution is going to be focused on, driven by the circumstance. A person's situation. The test was easy, or the teacher was being nice, or he grew up in this bad neighborhood, so we're going to blame personality and traits on certain things. Okay. So that's kind of where we're going with that one. Okay. So that's attribution theory. We have two different ways. We look at the disposition, which is that internal motivation, and then we look at the circumstances. That's the other one. Okay. So let's look at, well, there's two, and our next thing we're going to look at is going to be explanatory style. We have optimistic or pessimistic. We all know these people. The glass is half full, that every day's a good day. And then we have the people that everything is negative. They're always that negative lens that they look at life through. Okay. So think about this. This could have a big impact on who we are, what we are, and how we do things. So if we look at it, the optimistic, they attribute negative events to external causes and specific causes and global. So you think about this. Negative, it's something out there. It's an external force, okay? And the positive extras are, they're good. They're inside of you. Oh, yeah, that it's there. It's hard work. Or global causes. So don't get too caught up on the style here. And what to keep notice on this one is that people have a predictable way of explaining the causes of events to themselves. Okay, you can think of explanatory style as the pattern of attributions that people assign to events in their own and others' lives. So when somebody has a global explanatory style, they tend to attribute negative events to the causes they see as affecting many areas in their life. If something bad happens, a person with that global style might say, this always happens to me, or everything always goes wrong. If the person with a global style fails a test, they might think, I'm bad at everything. Which kind of leads us to that idea of the pessimistic one. In contrast to our optimistic version, this involves attributing negative events to internal and global causes and attributing positive events to external and specific causes. Okay? So what we need to understand is explanatory styles have a significant impact on individuals' motivation, emotional well-being, and overall mental health. Through the research that our fellow psychologists have done, we know that individuals with an optimistic explanatory style tend to be more resilient, persistent, and have better overall mental health compared to those with that pessimistic style. That negative energy takes something away from you. Okay. Learned helplessness, depression, and other negative psychological outcomes come from having that pessimistic view. And we need to understand that these can be changed with time and practice, but with anything, it's going to take work and effort on the part of the individual. You can't change somebody. They have to want to change themselves. Kind of our key thing that I need you to take away from this is the explanatory and attributions can be influenced by various factors such as cultural background, personal experiences, and cognitive biases. And I'm going to give you a sheet when I come back that's got about 152 cognitive biases, ways that impact our thinking. All right. So understand that we need to that people make errors. We're not perfect, but we can learn. We're going to look at, like I said, cognitive biases and attributions here in just a little bit more detail. So let's look at this one. We started in the 1960s. Researchers really kind of focused on this, and they looked and understood that we have a tendency to attribute dispositional explanations of behavior when we observe other people's behaviors, but we attribute situational explanations of behaviors when we explain our own behaviors. So this is going to be known as the actor-observer bias. And I'm going to come in here and change this typo because I don't like it. There we go. Okay, another big one is going to be I can't speak English today. It's going to be a fundamental attribution error. It's going to be defined as a tendency for us to analyze others' behaviors, to underestimate the impact of situation, and to overestimate the impact of personal disposition. So remember, when we look at these kind of things, we need to understand people tend to attribute behaviors of others to these factors and ignore other explanations such as situational or external factors. For example, if you observed a man hitting another man, you might believe that the hitter was the aggressor rather than the person, then considering the other person may have struck the first blow. We need to make sure that we're seeing both sides and we're trying to remove our personal biases. And that's going to be very hard because, like I said earlier, some of these can be ingrained in us from our culture. Okay. When we observe the behavior of individuals from minority groups or underrecognized groups, such as ethnic, sexual, or religious minorities, we tend to apply the same attribution errors to the entire group. For example, if we witness a member of a minority hitting someone, we may believe that everyone from that ethnic group is aggressive, rather than considering it from just one person or the situational factors that may account for it. Okay? Be careful because this ties into stereotyping, discrimination, and prejudice. Really easy. Then we have self-serving biases. These are our readiness to perceive ourselves favorably. We always want to believe the best about ourselves. We always want to see ourselves in a positive light. Many studies investigating this phenomenon have found that people see themselves as having above average intelligence or high moral standards and being more helpful than they are in reality. So we want to see ourselves in a good positive light. And if you take sociology, you'll learn about the looking glass self from Cooley and a couple of others. So don't remember that we aren't perfect. So fundamental attribution error, we judge others. Actor-believer bias, others versus ourselves. And then self-serving bias, we judge ourselves and, we see ourselves as superior. Okay. So we're going to move on to locus of control. And to understand this, I really want you to think about what a locus of control is. Dr. Julian Rotter in 1954 proposed an idea that people actively seek pleasant outcomes and avoid unpleasant ones by engaging in specific behavior. And by engaging in this behavior, our behavior is influenced by social context, related factors, just not psychological. One of the factors that he really kind of discovered was the locus of control. That is the perception of where we have control or what controls our life events. Okay, so if we have an internal locus of control, we need to understand that our personal decisions, our efforts, our ability, and hard work are what get us there. That's that control we have. Okay. These people tend to believe that they direct their life. Life does not just happen. They can influence people in situations. These are driven individuals with that self-inside motivation that have it like I said, or they're very highly motivated, and they're oriented to success. And when they fail, it hits them like a ton of bricks. And instead of knocking them down, it just redoubles their efforts. Okay. They're very proactive and they engage in ways to handle life stressors. They tend to engage in activities that improve their situation. They strive for achievement, working hard to develop their own abilities, skills, and knowledge. They're very curious. They want to find out why things happen and the way they do. They use current information to act in effort to create a positive environment. But keep in mind that people with an internal locus of control are more likely to blame themselves for circumstances beyond the control, a tendency that can be damaging and they put a lot of weight on themselves, they burn out, and it can cause some problems if you're not careful. Now, this is a sharp contrast from our folks with external locuses of control who believe that they have little or no control over their lives or what other people do. They often believe that life is a function of chance, fate, luck, other circumstances kind of drive them to where they go. It's simply unpredictable. People tend to be pessimistic, passive, and accepting. These beliefs may lead to learned helplessness. And remember, learned helplessness is kind of like the Eeyore. Why should I try? I'm just going to fail. That's a very bad mindset to get in. And because the people with this external locus of control do not believe themselves capable, they also believe their actions have little impact on themselves or their environment. So we need to be very careful with that. All right. So again, locus of control, we seek the pleasant outcomes. Got to cover that just a minute ago. All right. Now let's talk about another big thing is this can be person perceptions. This is our brain's ability to form impressions and make judgments on others based on limited information. We need to be careful with this, though. These initial judgments and interpretations are just not passive observation. They can actively shape our attitudes and behaviors towards others. Remember, this is the judging the book by its cover thing. So let's be careful in this because our biases creep in. There are three key personals we're going to talk about: the mere exposure effect, self-fulfilling prophecy, and social compassion. And you're going to hear that self-fulfilling prophecy is what I get on to several of you in class about all the time. Remember, this is our brain's ability to form impressions and make judgments based on limited information. Every day, whether we're watching strangers interact on a bus, choosing which post to like on social media, or participating in our classroom activities and discussions, we are always evaluating and interpreting the world around us through this lens. These initial judgments and interpretations are just not passive. Again, they're very active. They shape our attitudes and behavior towards our others. The first one we're going to talk about is going to be that mere exposure effect. And so when we talk about this one, imagine you hear a song on the radio and you really don't like it. But after hearing it several more times in the week, you start to like it. It starts to grow on you a little bit. And then soon it becomes your favorite. So basically, a repeated stimulus we hear over and over, we come to like. For example, I was not a huge fan of The Weeknd until I started listening to Starboy several times. And now I really like the song. And I'm more open to listen to more of his different music. Okay. So in other words, people develop a preference for things simply based on their familiar. Is anybody afraid to try new foods because it's out of your range? Okay. But maybe if you try tandoori or you try spicy food for a while, maybe you start to develop a taste for it and like it. This is the one that really kind of frustrates me as a teacher. This is the self-fulfilling prophecy. It's where your beliefs or expectations about a situation or another person, or positive or negative, can influence their behavior in a way that makes those expectations become true. Not believing you can do math. I'm stupid. I'm dumb. Well, eventually you start to believe that, and it's not a healthy mindset for you to have. Okay? So let's be careful doing this. When we looked at this self-fulfilling prophecy, we need to make sure that consider you don't think you're good at math. This may feel anxious about classes, leading to lack of focus, avoidance of studying. You may want to skip class, which is going to lead to more problems. You're not going to be successful. So be careful about labeling yourself and believing you can't do something. Keep that growth mindset in mind that I can't do it today, but maybe with more practice, I can do it tomorrow. Okay, so we're going to talk about the social comparison. It's going to be one of our last topics for today. When we talk about social comparison, this one kind of looks at how individuals evaluate themselves by comparing their abilities, behaviors, status, or attributes to others. You do this all the time. You look around, oh, she's smarter than I am. You always remember in class when you were little, you didn't want to risk it because you didn't want to look stupid. Okay, so social comparison upward involves comparing oneself to others who are perceived to be superior, and then we have downward where we look at others that we see them as inferior, and it tends to boost our esteem. Both of these need to be taken in context and be carefully balanced, okay? We need to make sure that we understand that, okay? We need to look at also relative appreciation. It's a concept closely tied to social comparison that refers to the dissatisfaction or resentment that arises when people perceive themselves as having less than they deserve compared to others. This perception of being deprived is often relative to the standards set by others in their social circles or society at large. People may feel relative deprivation even when their actual level of resources and achievement are abundant, highlighting the importance of social comparison and shaping it. You know, think about this. What you're doing is you're labeling yourself, and you're not happy with what you got, even if you're there. It's that I got to have it's that one-upmanship, and it's negative. All right, guys. Thank you. That's 4.1.